It doesn't start with a bang. It rarely does. We have been conditioned by Hollywood to expect the end of the world to arrive with explosions, alien ships, or grand speeches. But if you look at the timeline of history, catastrophe is usually much quieter. It starts with a line, not the anticipation of a concert cue or the consumerist ritual of a new phone launch. This line is different. It is hundreds of cars, sitting perfectly still under the bleaching weight of the desert sun. You can hear the engines idling, burning precious resources just to keep the air conditioning running. You can hear the static of radios searching for a signal that isn't there, and the restless tapping rhythm of people waiting for salvation that simply isn't coming. We are looking at the last gas station still open in 100 miles, perhaps the last one in America. For the generation that built the interstate highway system, the concept of stuck is temporary. It is an anomaly. We believe in perpetual motion, the idea that if you have the keys and the will, you can go anywhere. But look at the price sign towering over the lot. It still reads $23.49 a gallon. That number alone tells you the story of the last few months. But notice that nobody is looking at it anymore. In a world where the pumps are empty, the price is irrelevant. Money loses its meaning the moment utility evaporates. They are here because of a rumor. The most dangerous thing in a crisis isn't the shortage, it's the false hope. The word was that one more delivery truck was on its way. Like every lie that feels like a lifeline, it spread faster than fire. These people drove across state lines, burning the last of their fuel reserves to reach a concrete island that might not have a drop left to give. Now they are trapped. Windows rolled down as the fuel creates a Sophie's choice between AC and mobility. Look closely at the faces. There is a father in the back seat trying to mask his terror for his 2 children. There is a nurse, still in scrubs, who hasn't made her shift in 3 days. There is a man clutching a red fuel can, not for a car, but for a generator that keeps his wife's oxygen machine running. Everyone has a reason to be here. Everyone is desperate. And then the moment arrives. The manager steps out. He wipes the sweat and stress from his face and delivers the verdict. We're dry. In a civilized society, we expect a riot. We expect shouting. But the crowd doesn't shout. They just stand there. Because deep down, beneath the rumors and the hope, everyone knew this moment was coming. This is the shift. This is the quiet realization that movement itself has become a memory. There is a specific window of time. Historians and sociologists often debate its length, where a disaster is happening, but the people inside it still believe it is an inconvenience. The first few hours at the station are defined by this delusion. It is quiet. People sit in their idling fortresses, convinced that the radio is simply wrong, or that somewhere a competent authority is pulling levers to fix the supply chain. But as the sun climbs higher, the physics of the situation begin to assert themselves. Patience melts faster than the asphalt. The first crack in the veneer of order isn't violence, it's mechanical failure. Near the front of the line, a man tries to restart his car to inch forward. The engine coughs and dies. In a normal world, this is a frustration. Here, it is a blockade. A woman behind him yells at him to move it off the road, but looking around, the reality sets in. There is nowhere to go. The line is jammed in both directions, 2 miles of steel and sweat locked in a paralysis of their own making. By noon, the silence breaks. The arguments begin. This is the noise that obscures the signal. When official information vanishes, mythology takes its place. A man in a pickup claims the government is hoarding fuel for the military. Another swears there is a secret convoy headed north. In the absence of truth, the human mind invents patterns. Nobody knows what is true anymore, and functionally, nobody cares. The only truth that matters is the liquid remaining in the underground tanks. That is when the institution formally abdicates. The manager locks the station doors. He tapes a handwritten sign to the window. No more fuel. Wait for official update. Watch the crowd's reaction. They read it in silence. Then someone tears it down. This act is profound. It is the rejection of a reality that is too painful to accept. If we destroy the message, perhaps the tanker will still come. But the signal that the end has truly arrived comes in the afternoon, and it happens silently. The phones stop working. We forget that the invisible infrastructure of our digital lives runs on the same fuel as our cars. The nearby cell towers, running on backup generators, finally run dry and shut off. Suddenly the world shrinks. There is no news. No GPS to find an alternative route. No weather reports. Just heat, confusion, and the deafening sound of people thinking too loudly. Across the street, the grocery store closes early, its shelves already picked half clean. When a few teenagers break in after dark to grab water and canned food, the most terrifying thing isn't the theft, it is the response. There isn't one. No one stops them. Nobody even calls the police, because a collective, unspoken realization has washed over the crowd. No one is sure if the police are still coming. The safety net has snapped, but the people are still falling, waiting to hit the ground. There is an old adage in survival circles that society is only ever 3 missed meals away from anarchy. But in the modern age, we measure the endurance of civilization not in food, but in energy. And the clock is ticking much faster than we think. As night falls on that first day, the psychology of the crowd shifts. Car headlights flicker on, one by one, looking less like traffic and more like candles at a vigil. The darkness brings a paralyzed indecision. Some people sleep inside their vehicles, locking the doors against the unknown. Others sit on the curb, straining their ears for the rumble of heavy tires, listening for trucks that never arrive. The conversations change. A few start whispering about heading south, gambling on the idea of finding another town with power. But here is the trap. Leaving means risking the last drops of fuel they have left. So they stay. They are trapped not by walls, but by hope. Somewhere in the line, an engine turns over. The sound cuts through the dark, and for a split second, everyone looks up, hearts pounding, thinking it is the tanker. But it isn't. It's just one more person deciding to move, driving into the blackness even if they don't know where they are going. Morning comes slowly, and with it, a terrifying auditory void. There is no traffic noise, no planes overhead, no hum of engines anywhere. The desert wind brushes through the long line of parked cars, which now stands as a monument to what used to move. The air smells of sweat, metal, and faint gasoline, the scent of something valuable running out. This is the morning the rules change. The manager is gone. No one saw him leave, but the windows of the gas station are dark, and the coffee machine inside has stopped blinking. The authority figure has abdicated. Without the manager, the social contract dissolves. A man in a blue jacket, maybe a trucker, someone who understands logistics, steps forward. He carries a hose and a plastic container. He opens the hood of an abandoned car and starts siphoning fuel. In a functioning society, this is theft. In a survival scenario, it is resource reallocation. Nobody says a word, they just watch. Then the permission structure breaks. Someone else does the same, and then another. Within an hour, the line that once waited politely turns into a slow disassembly of itself. It is crucial to understand the motivation here. People start taking what is left not out of greed, but out of panic. It brings a strange kind of silence, the kind that comes when everyone is doing something they know is wrong, but no one can afford to stop. By mid-morning, the polite silence is replaced by the inevitable friction of scarcity. The arguments return. Two men fight over a single gallon of diesel. A woman screams at them to stop, clutching a child in her arms, pleading for decency. But decency requires a surplus. In a deficit, fear takes the wheel. Someone pulls out a gun. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't have to. He pulls it out just to remind everyone that fear now has rules of its own. The sound of the mechanical click echoes longer than any words could. This is the threshold. We like to believe that laws are etched in stone, but they are actually written on paper, and paper burns. By the second evening, the gas station isn't a line anymore. It is a camp. People stop pretending they are passing through. Tents go up. Blankets are tied over car windows to block the sun and the prying eyes of neighbors. Someone starts a fire in an old trash barrel, the smoke curling into a sky that is finally turning cold. A quiet kind of order forms, not the democratic kind you vote for, but the primal kind that happens when survival needs structure. The nurse becomes the medic. The trucker organizes supplies. A retired cop tries to keep the peace. But as they huddle around that trash barrel fire, staring into the embers, they are no longer citizens of a state. They are a tribe. And tribes are defined not by who they include, but by who they exclude. Somewhere after midnight, the ghost of the old world makes a brief appearance. The generator inside the station coughs back to life. It's a jagged, mechanical sound, but to the people standing in the dark, it sounds like a choir. A few lights flicker on inside the store. Watch the reaction. It is Pavlovian. People rush toward the door. For a split second, the electricity tricks their brains. It feels like hope. It implies that the grid is back, that the system has rebooted, that the The nightmare is a glitch that has finally been patched. But when they push through the doors, they don't find a savior. They find a tombstone. It's a note from the manager, scrawled across the counter in black marker. Don't wait for help. There's no more coming. This is the moment the economy crashes. Not the stock market. That is an abstraction for men in suits. We are talking about the real economy, the trust that binds us. The truth settles heavy on the room. It is not just that the tanker didn't arrive. It is that nobody is sending it. Not to this town. Maybe not anywhere. When the realization hits that the supply chain is dead, the value of every object in that parking lot is instantly recalculated. A gold watch is now just heavy metal. A stack of $100 bills is just kindling. The new currency is liquid. The new gold standard is octane. That night, the camp fractures into two distinct economic philosophies. The divide begins. The first group are the settlers. They decide to stay and ration what is left. They are trying to preserve the old world. They pool the food, the shade, and the fragments of order. They build a small list of names and draft a constitution on a piece of cardboard. The laws are simple. Share water. Stay armed but calm. No violence unless necessary. It feels fragile because it is. It is civilization on training wheels. They are trading freedom for a chance at sustained survival. The second group are the nomads. They cannot handle the stagnation. They pack what they can, siphon whatever drops are left in the abandoned tanks, and drive into the desert. No one tries to stop them. Everyone just watches the taillights vanish into the horizon, knowing deep down that sooner or later those lights will go out too. These are the investors who cashed out too early, and the market corrects them swiftly. The next morning, the cost of that miscalculation is made visible. The first body is found. It's someone who tried to walk instead of drive, overcome by dehydration. Nobody says it out loud, but the realization hangs in the air. This isn't temporary anymore. This death cements the new economic reality. The moral lines blur faster than anyone expected. Yesterday, sharing was a social nicety. Today, sharing feels dangerous. Hoarding feels justified. Look at the man standing by his car. Yesterday, he was a neighbor who would have apologized if he bumped into you in line. Today, he stands guard over 5-gallon jugs like he is guarding his own heartbeat. He understands the new exchange rate. When the fuel ran out, it didn't just stop the cars. It started something else, something older, quieter, and far less forgiving. We are witnessing the return of a zero-sum game. If I give you a gallon, I lose a day of life for my family. Compassion is a luxury that requires a surplus, and in the desert, the surplus is gone. By the third night, the illusion is fully dispelled. The station is dark again. The generator, that last mechanical heartbeat of the old world, gave out just before sunset. It ran out of fuel, just like the cars, just like the patience of the crowd. Its silence is heavier than the noise ever was. Now there is nothing but the hiss of the wind moving through the empty pumps. It is in this silence that the behavior of the group shifts from waiting to mourning. The fire in the trash barrel burns low. Notice the volume of the camp. People talk less now. In a world of abundance, conversation is entertainment. In a world of scarcity, conversation is a calorie expenditure. Words take energy, and so does hope. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you don't waste breath on small talk. The line of cars, once a symbol of American freedom and mobility, has transformed. It has become a graveyard of machines. Walk down the line, look at what is happening to these vehicles. They are being cannibalized. Some have been stripped for parts, mirrors, tires, batteries. These items are being scavenged, not for their original purpose, but for a future that might never arrive. A side view mirror becomes a signal reflector. A battery becomes a fire starter. A tire becomes fuel for the barrel. We are watching the rapid de-evolution of technology. The desert has started reclaiming them already, coating their windshields in a thin layer of dust. It takes millions of years to build a civilization, but nature can bury it in a weekend. Yet, despite this, there are the holdouts. A few people still wait near the pumps. They stand there touching the cold metal, like they can will the station back to life just by staying close. This is the false sanctuary. We cling to institutions, banks, churches, gas stations, long after they have ceased to function, because the alternative is to admit that we are alone in the wilderness. They believe that if they stand in the right spot, the system will recognize them and reward them. But the system is gone. We see this denial in the nurse. She sits beside a car, car, her head resting on her knees, her eyes red from exhaustion. She is wearing a uniform that commands respect in a hospital, but out here, it is just fabric. She is waiting for a shift change that has been canceled forever. And then we see the acceptance of the new reality. Look at the trucker. He isn't waiting. He is working. He sharpens a piece of scrap metal into something that looks halfway between a tool and a weapon. He sits by the fire, running a stone against the steel. Scrape, scrape, scrape. No one questions it. In fact, they look at him with a mix of fear and relief. He's the first to admit what the rest are trying to ignore, that the era of the consumer is over and the era of the defender has begun. He understands that this gas station is no longer a place of commerce. It is a fortress made of glass and aluminum, and its walls are dangerously thin. The holdouts cling to the pumps because they represent the old world, a world of schedules, supply chains, and safety. But the trucker sharpening his shiv knows the truth. The station isn't a sanctuary, it's a beacon. And in the dark, a beacon doesn't just attract help, it attracts predators. The sun sets on the third day, and the darkness feels different. It feels occupied. The wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of rain, but also something else. The static is gone. The arguments have stopped. The silence is absolute. And that is usually when the wolves come. There is a moment in every collapse scenario that marks the end of the passive phase. Up until now, everyone at the station has been waiting. They have been reacting to the loss of the world they knew. But nature abhors a vacuum. Where there are sheep waiting to be sheared, the wolves will eventually arrive. It happens sometime past midnight. Headlights appear on the far edge of the highway. First one set, then two. The camp stirs. Watch the psychology of the crowd one last time. Even after 3 days of neglect, after the notes and the silence, their first instinct is still optimism. They look at those lights and think, it's the tanker, it's the National Guard, it's help. The engines grow louder, cutting through the stillness, but as the vehicles pull into the lot, the illusion shatters. These aren't government trucks. They aren't corporate tankers. They are rough, modified, and purposeful. When they stop, the truth is simple. They are not here to deliver. They are here to take. A group of men step out. Their faces are covered. They are carrying rifles. Now, pay attention to the dynamic here. In the movies, this is a shootout. There is screaming, threats, and explosions. But in reality, true power is quiet. These men don't shout. They don't threaten. They don't have to. They just walk past the dying fire and start checking the car. This is the final transfer. It is the inevitable economic correction where resources shift from those who hoard to those who hunt. The people at the station, the nurse, the father, the retirees, they stand frozen. Everyone knows what this means. The last of the fuel, the few cans of peaches, the water, the batteries, all of it is changing hands tonight. And here is the hardest truth to swallow. No one fights. Not really. Why? Because the people at the station have already fought their war. They fought it in quieter ways for 3 days. They fought with fear. They fought with hunger. They fought with the exhausting, endless mental calculus of how much humanity is worth when the system that rewarded it is gone. They are spent. Their will was broken long before these men arrived with guns. The hunters move with efficiency. They siphon the tanks that the settlers were guarding. They take the food that was being rationed. It is a hostile takeover, executed with the indifference of a foreclosure. This moment proves that possession is not 9/10 of the law. Possession is only valid if you have the capacity to defend it. The trucker, the one who was sharpening the metal shiv, perhaps he understood this. Perhaps that is why, when dawn breaks, he is gone. By the time the sun rises, the raiders have vanished. The road is empty again, but the camp has been hollowed out. The nurse is gone. The trucker's truck is gone. Did they go willingly? Were they taken as assets? Or did they simply realize that the gas station was a trap and hitch a ride with the only people who seemed to have a plan? We will never know. What is left behind are the husks, empty cans, a burnt-out sign, and a silence that feels final. The station has transitioned from a place of desperation to a place of irrelevance. The hoarders lost because they played by the rules of a world that no longer existed. They waited for permission. They waited for help. The hunters won because they realized that the only permission that matters anymore is physics. The transfer is complete. The weak have been stripped, and the strong have moved on. By dawn, the raiders are gone too. The road is empty again. The nurse is gone. The trucker's truck is gone. What is left behind are the artifacts of a failed civilization. Empty cans, a burnout sign, and a silence that feels final. It is a strange scene. If you were to walk through the lot now, you wouldn't see a battlefield. There are no craters, no burning wreckage. It looks almost peaceful, but it is the peace of a graveyard. For the first time in days, the wind shifts. It carries the faint metallic smell of rain. Somewhere, clouds are building, rolling over the mountains, bringing the water that these people were praying for just 48 hours ago. But the irony is cruel. Nobody is left to see them. The water will wash away the oil stains. It will turn the cardboard rules into pulp. It will erase the tire tracks of the settlers and the hunters alike. The last gas station on Earth stands quiet. And this brings us to the final lesson of the collapse. We often imagine the end of the world as a loud event. We imagine it as a crescendo, a fiery climax where we go out fighting. But look at this station. It wasn't destroyed by a bomb. It wasn't burned down by a mob. It is simply irrelevant. It stands there, a perfectly functional piece of engineering, waiting for fuel that will never come, to power cars that are no longer there. It is a monument to a specific way of life, a life of easy movement, of cheap energy, of endless horizons, that has quietly evaporated into the desert air. This is how it truly ends, not with a bang, but with the realization that the machinery of our lives has stopped, and we are too small to restart it. Because once the fuel runs out, the world doesn't end in fire. That is a story we tell ourselves to feel important. The reality is much simpler and much more terrifying. It ends when there's nowhere left to go.